On our minutes. I have a motion to the minutes. They have a second to that motion. Any questions or comments? If not, without objection, they will stand. Ordinances on first reading tonight. Madam Clerk, I'm not going to have you read all of these as was requested by certain council member. So you're off the hook there, but we have covered these. And we're familiar with those. I do want to move into item A. If there's any questions about item A, Dr. Burrs, is this for A? No. Okay. No questions on A, but Joda, I see we have maybe some comments on the legal items. But before you say something, Dr. Burrs, I'm going to hit your light in case, but we do have a comment from the Chief of Staff.
Okay, I was just going to suggest that they be moved or deferred
Okay,
because there have been some questions.
there have been some questions, so
Okay,
if you don't care, let's,
no, that's fine.
great. Jody, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Sorry. I just want to make sure we came back to item A. I wanted to quickly just first say that we appreciated the effort and process that council put into the legislative process that resulted in the proposed ordinance. And the administration's perspective is that the ordinance on a whole is a step in the right direction. And we agree on the need for an update to the rates. But I did want to respectfully request a 1-week deferral from the council on this item to discuss an alternative proposal to specifically 2 of the rates proposed in the ordinances. We know, again, that there hasn't been a significant increase in the rates for district directors in about 18 years, but we do want to provide an alternative because we do have some concerns around the A-class fees, and I'm happy to get into that, but I wanted to stop there and see if you would, how you want to proceed, if you would like me to discuss this here. Or...
If you'd like to discuss it, I do see a light.
Sure, that's great. So our primary concern is but I'm happy to defer to you if you want to address the light first, or if you want me to go first. Either way. Okay, great. I think our primary concern right now is just limited to the A-class fees, particularly the daytime tow and night weekend holiday tow rates, which the ordinance has proposed to move from $125 to $250 and $135 to $275 respectively. And the administration's proposed alternative is to simply adjust the previous rate set in June 2004 to keep up with inflation. So we'd essentially chain the tow rate to inflation. And according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that put us at a daytime tow rate of $196.37. We'd round up and propose $200, and then the nighttime tow rate would be $215 respectively. And the good news is that the administration's proposal on these rates is only about $50 apart. So we're not too far apart from where the council or where this proposed legislation is. But we do believe that $50 can really matter in this inflationary environment. And particularly to many Chattanooggans who, when they get a towing expense, it's unexpected. And again, we want to make clear that we understand the need to adjust these rates for inflation, but that extra 27% on top of that is just not something the administration can support. And again, if everyday Chattanoogans are adjusting their lives and tightening their belts because of inflation, we expect that the towing industry can do the same. Again, this is broadly a step in the right direction, and we hope that the council can support a 1-week deferral to consider just a change to those 2 specific rates. We're okay with the B class and C class rates, and moving from flat to hourly rates, which we think can be a pretty significant step forward, and it does often offer a nice revenue increase for the industry as well. So I'll stop there and take any questions you might have.
Okay, I do have a light. Dr. Burrs, I see your light was active, but I think we're done there. Unless you have something to add. Okay.
Others, yeah.
Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Joda, for the updates. As far as this process is concerned, the ordinance was a 3-month process. It went through the Beer and Record Board, was approved. We also had a public input session. So a lot of work has gone into this research of the rates and all those things. And, I'm an everyday Chattanoogan too. So I understand that, we're all impacted by inflation. This ordinance has been something put on the back burner for quite some time. So at the current moment, I have no intentions of deferring it. I plan to move forward with the item as presented on our current agenda. And so, I understand that, you all have, concerns about the rates, but the rates are comparable to those in our area. We did a lot of research on this to make sure that they are comparable. So I just wanted to make sure that, people understood what the rates were, why they were, and why, in my opinion, there's no need for a deferral.
Councilwoman Coonrod, are you
I'm done. Yeah.
complete? Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you so
you're
much.
welcome. Thank you for the comments. Councilwoman Coonrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Joda, I share the same concerns and speaking with constituents too, up until today, and also receiving emails about the increased pricing of fees, like they're doubled. And when I think about what's happening now in our communities, people are already being displaced. And if we can't afford, housing for these individuals, and then if they're living in their cars and they lose their car, the additional impact that it's going to have. I can support, an increase, but I don't think that doubling it at this rate. I just don't agree with that. I could most definitely support a deferral if that's what the council would like to do to see, well, once it's moved into ordinance form and placed on the agenda, then we still can further negotiate it with that. But, I would, like to see a rate around, 150 or the 200 between, but most definitely not just doubled. I do agree that it has been an issue that should have been taken care of before now. But to me, we have more pressing, urgent issues right now that we need to be dealing with. And I just don't think the record fees is one of those that fit into urgency for me. But I do thank you for bringing up your concerns and letting it be known where the administration, where they stand, because I too have the same concerns, and and when we talked about it in our strategic planning meeting, there were several council members who voiced concerns about the fees and the impact that it can have. So, and I'm gonna speak to my district. Although, yes, I agree that we all are everyday citizens here in Chattanooga, but I have pockets of concentrated poverty where people are losing their cars because they don't have a tag on their car, or they have visitors to come to these housing developments. So their cars are getting towed. They're already on the lower income spectrum, so they can't afford $250 to get a tow, more or less the additional fees that's added on there for every day. And we're talking about groups of people who may be on welfare to where that's $185 a month to try to supplement, additional things that they may need for their housing. So I think this is an added barrier. And, the One Chattanooga strategy is about removing barriers, not increasing barriers to our citizens that's in Chattanooga. So that's where I stand with it. And yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman. Anybody else wish to comment on item A? Madam Vice Chair, I do see your light. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much. Just a couple of more comments, and thank you so much, Councilwoman Coonrod, for your concerns. I too also have, areas of concentrated poverty in District 7. But again, I too am an everyday Chattanoogan. These are maximum rates. And we have discussed this over the past 3 months with the public forum. Rates were approved out of the Beer and Record Board. So I just wanted to make sure that, just for the record, we've gone through the process. We've gone through legislative committee. We've extensively followed the process, extensively allowed input, not just from the public, but also from council as well. I had not received any public comment via email, telephone, or in person regarding these rates from my constituents or anyone else's constituents for that matter. So if there are concerns or anything, feel free to reach out, but I hadn't heard anything from the time I started this in August up until today. So I just want to make sure that that was on the record, and these are maximum rates. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Hill, I see your light. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Joda, help me understand this piece of legislation has been in the works since August. Why are you just now bringing us concerns now that we're going to vote on it and ask for a 1-week deferral?
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. So, council did lead this legislative process, and while the administration wasn't formally involved in the creation of the legislation, we do recognize we could have been involved sooner. I do believe that when the mayor flagged the rates, I wanted to bring this alternative proposal to council, but in terms of who was driving the process, it wasn't really the administration, but again, I acknowledge that staff could have brought these concerns up sooner, but as we are talking about this ahead of first read, we felt it was appropriate to flag.
All right. Councilwoman Coonrod, you are next, followed by Councilwoman Knoll.
Thank you. I'll defer to let Councilwoman Noel go, and then I'll speak after her.
Very well.
Since I've spoken.
Councilwoman Knoll, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilwoman Coonrod. So when we had a session on this, it was a raised eyebrow for me that it had doubled. But then everyone was looking at me like I had a second head because I thought it was too expensive. But then they were saying that it was compatible to the other rates in the other areas near us. So once again, I'm on board with Councilwoman Hill. Why at the last minute those concerns was not brought up when I had an issue with them being doubled when we had session. So just curious. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Councilwoman Coonrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to the notes, and I'm sure Karen or Ms. Nicole can pull up the strategic planning meeting where I was very boisterous about my concerns. So it's really not anything new. And yes, we have been working on it and talking about it for, 3 months, or having our input maybe once or twice or however, and the process was adhered to. However, once it comes in front of council, like any other thing that is being brought to the council, we discuss it, we share our input and our thoughts on it, and then it's done been stuff we done totally agreed upon as a council, and once it make it to the agenda, it's done changed the whole format. So we're gonna say, okay, for this particular thing, well, everything else, we need to make sure that we abide by that. Meaning you're saying, oh, if somebody come up with something, the same questions need to be asked. Why did you wait till it get to this point to want to change it? We consistently want to pick and choose depending on which council person is introducing something, that we want to hold people to certain things. But oh, if it's somebody else, then we want to be more lax and lenient on it. No, we need to stop playing them games. We need to start being consistent. And if we're not, things change. That's the point of change. And Councilwoman, she did a great job on it. But that does not mean everybody has to agree to it, that we should be muzzled or raped of our voices to say, what we agree to or what we don't agree to. It's not taken away from the work that she done. And then I just want to remind everybody, this is Chattanooga. We're creating a one Chattanooga region, a district for what fits for the Chattanoogans here. We're not looking at what other people are doing to try to mimic for their areas. We're looking at what's best for Chattanooga. What's best that's going to be workable for our citizens, what's affordable for our citizens, not what's happening in the next region over or whatever that they're doing. So we look at other strategies when it comes to housing and other people areas, and then we say we don't want to implement it. Or we look at other ideas and then we say, oh no, this don't. So I'm really confused on that. That's a whole nother lane for me. But again, it goes back to being inconsistent. It goes back to whenever a council person that we may favor more or not, to what we want to say, we're going to stick to it, even if we don't agree with it. And if it's a no, it's a no. And just like Councilwoman Dolly said, like, she wants to move forward with it. But it's 9 of us. And if however we choose to defer it, to work on it, if that's what we choose to do, that's fine. If it still moves forward and be placed on the agenda, that's fine too. Because at the end of the day, it still may not be voted on. We just went through this with the Airport Inn situation. It could be anything that happens that change at that moment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Henderson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sitting, listening to the discussion and the request from the administration, having a little bit of history over the last, I don't know, 8 years, however long I've set up here, many times when we get to a point that we're ready to present legislation, a council person perhaps will ask for a little bit more time to look at something. And we have typically accommodated that unless, I don't know, unless there was a circumstance maybe where time was of the essence, where I'm not sure that we need to pass this week or next week or whenever. And I'm always surprised that this council can work on something as a council for months, and until we get it ready to bring forward and it gets in the news, people are really unaware of that we're even working on it. And I noticed over the weekend, a couple of media published reports about it. And so I guess we're getting a little bit of feedback, and people are saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And I got some response as well. So I think I want to make sure that we have it right rather than quickly. So I would tend to be in favor of a deferral just to make sure that we have this right, because it has been so long since we've addressed it. And I'm not sure that I don't see a deferral, causing this to go down in flames by any means. But if we need to defer it a week to get it right, I certainly could support that.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to make a comment on item A? Okay, we'll see. Councilman Hester, I drew you out.
First of all, let me say good evening to everyone. I too listened to everybody, their comments, and I think since August, we've talked about this, we've discussed it, and why defer something we've all sat around, we pondered over, we studied, and in my opinion, there's no need to defer it. Since we did, we discussed it, we debated over it. I think it's time to, some of my folks in my district said it was too expensive, but they came to the thought that for the betterment of Chattanooga, let's continue this process. Thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other comments want to be made on the record for this item before we move into our items under legal? All right, seeing none, I believe, Dr. Burrs, we started on the building, the fuel and gas, the mechanical, plumbing, and fire code question. If you don't mind, ma'am, I believe the administration would like to make a quick comment okay, very good.
Yes. So I did want to, I feel like I'm having deja vu here. I asked the administration if they would entertain a deferral on this item. We did have some comments from folks who work with this code every single day, and some feedback that has come into the administration and to council. And I think the exact deferral timeframe is something that I think we can hammer out actually sometime this afternoon, but by 6 o'clock, I think the administration can provide some more feedback, whether it be 2 weeks or 30 days, to better understand the impact that this might have on our housing industry, particularly given our topography challenges and how there may be some differences between the code that's adopted in Hamilton County and here. So would just respectfully request a deferral on this item.
Joe, are we referring to item F in particular, the item that has drawn most attention, or are we talking about the other items which have drawn a little attention? But
Yes, I believe we are only referring to item F.
Which is the fire code. Okay. And it is my understanding that we need to understand too, that if we do a deferral, an ordinance will take 2 reads, so it'll be 2 weeks. So make sure, and we're obviously not here on the 27th and the 3rd. Dr. Burrs, I see your light. You have the floor.
Yes, sir. I was just going to follow up on that. Joda?
Yes, Council.
Yeah, a deferral's fine. But I was listening to the chair and we like to have a time. So 30 days?
I'm sorry.
Well, you said we were going to hammer things out and we don't need to hammer things out. I think Chair just said that we couldn't because of the 2 readings.
Right. So I think
So 30 days?
January 10th is, I believe, the Tuesday in January. That would give us 30 days or so. Is that correct?
January 10th gives us.
Yeah.
Yeah. 30 days.
I'm fine with that. I just, so what you're wanting to do, which makes sense, is defer F
Yes. Item
for
F
30 days?
for 30 days till the January 10th meeting.
Oh, okay.
Now, if I may interrupt,
Is that correct, Chair?
well, it's the first day we'll be back.
Okay.
So if I may, I would like to get the city attorney's opinion on pushing this to January 10th. Are we borderline with compliance? Or do you think I'm going to leave the question, I'm going to leave the witness. Do you think if we are working on something in that general direction that we will be okay with the state? See how I did that? Thank you.
I will say yes with a little bit of explanation. It's all dependent upon what the state fire marshal will agree to regarding this. The danger you have, the longer you run past January the 1st of 2023, is that the state fire marshal can come in and impose different regulations on you. So that's the concern here, at least under the statute. And this is a new revision to TCA 68-120-101, which goes into effect specifically on January the 1st of 2023.
I'll take that as a maybe. Mr. Anderson, I've been spent too much time with lawyers these days. Mr. Anderson, I see you want to say something, but I also wouldn't mind if fire could give us your 2 cents, and Mr. Rucker, if you
Chairman,
would like to give your 2 cents.
I was actually going to tell you that I'm going to meet with these 2 individuals at the conclusion of this meeting.
Okay.
And we'll have a better answer for you. They're not prepared to address this body right now. But if you will give me, Chairman and Councilwoman, just a couple of hours, we can tell you how long we need for a deferral.
Okay, and you can have that to us
Before the 6 o'clock meeting, yes.
Fair enough.
They're not going to leave the room until we're done today after y'all adjourn.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. I think that's a great compromise. Councilwoman Hill, I hear you over there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to make it till 6, y'all.
It's not that bad, is it? We're not that bad.
No, it's this
Oh.
cough. I can't like gross out this whole room. Item C as well, the International Fuel Gas Code. I believe that's one that the city council received a redlined email about some inconsistencies with the way that things were actually installed compared to what the legislation would, or the ordinance would then require. So if you all don't have a copy of that, I'm sure that Nicole can forward it to you. It was very clear and specific. He said, this is not how you install this stuff. So we wouldn't want to make those mistakes. Overall, as many of you know, and I've looped in several folks within the administration, my concern is anything that we can do to be very thoughtful about the cost to produce a safe unit is of the highest importance. So I recognize we have a lot of things to balance. And as you all know, I mean, we're not just talking, when we talk about affordable units, we're not only looking at the regulations for sprinkles or regulation for driveways or whatever it might be. It all goes together, but consequently everything has to move forward at the same time and everything has to move toward a common purpose. The fact that these have to be approved and in place ideally by January 1 makes me feel a lot like our wastewater education, where we learned about it at the very last minute. And it's a shame that we didn't have this a month prior to now so that we could be deferring and not have to worry about hustling at an unnecessary pace. I look forward to what you all are able to do in the interim between now and the deferral. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Henderson, I see your light. You have the floor.
Chris, help me understand why such a long deferral? I mean, other than the fact that we have a Christmas break in there, and we've got 2 weeks that we could address it. And then I don't understand what it is that's taking so long to try to get worked out.
Councilman, this need for a deferral only came to our attention a few hours ago, earlier today. So it is my hope as well that we can ask for a 2-week deferral. I just haven't had an opportunity to meet with Bo and Dallas and others about that. That's why I just need a few more hours.
Okay, all right.
I hope we can come to you and say 2 weeks, but if it's more complicated than that, we're going to ask for January 10th.
So Chris, if it's not January 10th, it'll be December 13th.
That's correct.
That's what I'm seeing in my calendar. Okay,
Is
thanks.
it a math problem? Is that what it is?
I'm not sure if it is, but I'll ask for your help if it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, any other questions on our international codes? And item G, if you'll notice on your agenda, is not part of that grouping, just as a side note. Moving into economic development, mayor's office with appointments and a special exceptions permit. Any questions on that, council? I'll watch the board. We'll move into purchases next, if no questions. Seeing no lights, I did have a question on a definition under street maintenance division of public works, and it was the long properties in parentheses, and I read that as a specific property that was named long properties, and I did get clarification from the city that that is a description, not a proper name of a property. So long properties are, I think, we're commonly referred to as the long right-of-ways. So we all learn something every single day. There's yours. All right. Moving into December 6th, our proposed agenda. I'll never get tired of that. Our proposed agenda. If you'll take a look at that, council, and hit your light if you have any questions. Several items that we are covering today under council office and legal. Then we'll move into no first readings next week. And then we'll move into more appointments and under resolutions, mayor's office. Yes, ma'am, and I have one too. So let's see if yours is the same as mine. You have the floor.
Okay, it has with item H, the very end.
The special exceptions permit.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
I have not been able to get, and is Karen here? Rennick? And Phil, I think this is for you too. All right. As I understand it, this needs a special exceptions because it's a nightclub near residential.
That's correct. The definition of nightclub has several components that trigger it. And one of them, I think, is activity after midnight, more than 100 people. There's a series of items in that.
All right. And so am I also to understand that there's a bar near it
That's correct. Bar
that
Watson.
council has already set a precedent on before there was a need for a special exceptions permit?
That's correct. Bar Watson was previously the Palms, and the Palms was in place prior to the special exception permit for a nightclub. So council did not act on that. And then the Palms was transferred to Bar Watson. So council has not acted on the Palms or now Bar Watson.
All right, so that's not what I'm asking. So there were restrictions placed on the Palms and then to Bar Watson relative to hours of operation, relative to certain nights of the week. It wasn't a carte blanche, stay open till 3 o'clock every morning.
So council did not act on the Palms. So we don't have a resolution that would have council limited hours of operation for that. That would have been whatever, I guess, the ordinance was in place at that time. Because it's been, I think it is a little complex, and you're right, that
It's a
because
lot
it's,
complex.
right, and because really Bar Watson is the same as the Palms with a name change.
We
So
can
it's-
call it the Palms.
Right.
I don't
It's
care
been
what-
in place a long time, and council did not act on that business being in operation through like this, where you would have reviewed it, placed conditions on it. We do not have that because that's just been in business, it's been in operation for so long.
Okay. So here's my dilemma. Whatever the Palms, whatever you're telling me whatever restrictions are on the Palms operation, the Palms asked for that?
No, I am not aware of restrictions on the Palms because
They're only
mine-
open till
they were
3.
open before any of the current restrictions were in place.
So I need a history on that.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the Palms is only open on late till 3 in the morning on, I think, Friday and Saturday nights.
That's correct. They have limited hours. Yeah.
Oh, then you know.
Right.
That's what
I
I'm
have
talking-
an email drafted to send back to you, so I
Yeah.
will hit send on that when we're done here.
All right. They have limited hours. That happens somehow. And I'm trying to figure out if we set a precedent for some reason. And I think we could get ourselves in a bit of trouble by acting differently with this thing, with the, whatever this new place is.
Right.
All right. And I think the restrictions were set because it's near residential. All right. So it wasn't 7 nights a week, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, we will do the history, and we might get with DRP and the city attorney's office to make sure we have a good answer prior to coming back.
Yeah, before next week.
That's correct.
Because there's been a lot of energy about getting this special exceptions permit. And I'm thinking, how come? What's the deal? Number one. And number two, I think we have to be very careful about if a precedent has already been set, then we need to, that's a little bit too loose.
Okay, we will get you an answer, and I'll send it to you prior to next Tuesday's meeting, but be prepared to speak to it at Tuesday's meeting.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Phil, the only reason there's a special exceptions permit is because it's near residential.
Yes.
All right. And are there any limitations to bars near residential?
At least under the current special exceptions permit, which it was not in effect at the time, and it's a 750-foot buffer distance in here under the code.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this falls under that, Karen, correct?
It does. There is a residentially zoned property that is close to this site. The special exception permit for a nightclub does allow reduction in that 750-foot buffer by council. And we do need to, and this isn't within that 750-foot buffer. We did a site visit, a staff member did a site visit, and the site's vacant and appears to have not been used.
All right.
And that is in our report.
So that's another dimension. So council would have to remove or lower the distance.
That's correct.
And I mean, this is a lot of special interest in this thing, and I want to make sure we get it right. So is this correct? Council would have to affirmatively lower it from 750?
I believe it's 250, but I don't have the number in front of me.
It actually shows, unless I'm reading the wrong version here, 750 feet. And it says that the council may impose, decrease it in part or in entirety, and impose additional conditions for the protection of residential property. So it gives you all the.
So we could lower it to 250.
Yes.
I don't know what kind of conditions we could put on.
Talking about noise issues, and issues here about lights and noise in connection
And
with the operation.
staff was recommending conditions to the hours of operation they propose. They have the extended hours for Friday through Sunday. And so that was a staff recommendation. It's conditions limiting to those hours for those days.
Okay, so we could do it Friday and Saturday till 3 in the morning and the rest of the week 11?
And that is whatever council
I
would
mean, is
like,
that
right?
what you're talking
Right, we were
about?
just talking about, they've not asked for the extended hours the whole week, so we were just recommending limiting it to the
Well, they
hours they
asked
were
me for
requesting.
the extended hours. so
Okay.
I would-
So their application, we do have a staff report, so I'll send that to you, they're not asking for every night to be open till 3. So we were just recommending the limiting to those 3 nights
If
they
you
were
could send
requesting.
that to me,
I will.
thank you very much. Thank you, but I've not been able to get answers till now.
No, I
so-
understand.
Thank
And this is on our December 6th planning item. So we have a week. If Karen and Phil, if we could spend a little time this week with Dr. Burrs and make sure we get those conditions
Absolutely.
correct to be ready for a vote on next week. Thank you. My question was in relation to item G, but Dr. Lambert, I'll get with you offline. I was just curious about the item under community health, but I'll get with you offline, ma'am. Moving into future considerations, if there are no further questions or comments on the December 6th proposed agenda, if you would take a look at future considerations. Some items under Public Works. Bill, if I could, are you still in the room? Oh, there you are. You don't get up. Don't get up. I'm just going to say on item 2, that's really an older item we discussed years ago. To clarify to council, there's not actually a project that's in queue for the abandonment of that old sewer line that ran diagonally. This is basically cleaning up something we had done or asked for several years ago. And okay, just want to make sure we don't, no reason to come up and clarify that. I think we just handled that item. Okay. Seeing no lights under future considerations, we have no department reports. We will have 2 committees today, Parks and Public Works, Budget and Finance. And because Mr. Goldberg is going to be leaving us, we will definitely make him go last today. And we will now move into Parks and Public Works. You knew that was coming. Councilman Hester, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully everyone had a fun festival time doing Thanksgiving with family and friends. Welcome to Parks and Public Works Committee. Can we accept the minutes? Thank you, thank you. Madam, can you read ordinance H, please?
An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the unopened right-of-way adjacent to the 1800 block of South Holtzclaw Avenue as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
See no hands. Resolution, can you read E, please?
A resolution authorizing the Department of Public Works to erect commemorative secondary street name signs of Tremont Street from Fraser Avenue South to the dead end, designated this section of Tremont Street as commemorative Leslie Allen Jordan Way.
Thank you. Can you read F to H, please?
F, a resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award the professional services on-call blanket contract for structural engineering services number E22027101 for a 4-year term with no options to renew the 6 consultant firms listed per their qualifications package. Alfred Benesch and Company, Allen and Halshaw, Inc., CTI Engineers, Inc., Neil Schaefer, Inc., Stantec Consulting Services, Inc., and Volkert, Inc., in the amount of $2.5 million yearly. G, a resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award the professional services on-call blanket contract for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering services contract number E22028101 for a 4-year term with no option to renew to the 2 consultant firms listed per their qualification package, Allen and Holshaw, Inc., and March Adams and Associates, Inc., in the amount of $1 million yearly. H, A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award the professional services on-call blanket contract for architectural services contract number E22026101 for a 4-year term with no options to renew to the 7 consultant firms listed per their qualifications package. Allen and Halshaw, Inc., Artec Design Group, Inc., Durthick, Henley, and Wilkerson Architects, PLLC, Franklin Associates Architect, Inc., Heflin, Cronenberg Architects, PLLC, MBI Companies, Inc., and Rodin Carroll Architects, Inc., in the amount of $2 million annually.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we have a presentation from Parks and Outdoors.
Good afternoon, Chair, council members.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to deep breath because I'm going to absorb about 15 minutes of your time. So let me just breathe a little bit here. The goal, Committee Chair, is to bring you up to speed as a group on the progress of the Parks and Outdoors Plan. So this is a gut check, a receipt of some information that we've learned, and an opportunity for a conversation after this presentation, before, during. The key is to make sure we're all on the same page and collectively moving along. So I will jump right in and do the best I can to move through as quickly as possible. Let me first make a little vocabulary check, if I may, that'll smooth our discussion. I'm going to use the word parks to talk about this. And when I say parks, I hope you hear that I mean everything your Department of Parks and Outdoors does. Recreation, special events, arts, culture, planning. I'm going to use parks the same way New York City uses it, just to make this easy to talk about. So I just want to lay that out first. And then I'm kind of going to set the bar with y'all because I can, and they gave me a microphone. This is one of my favorite photos, and I think it's important to y'all. So I'm going to preach just a tick. This is a photo of a guy named Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vall and the folks that designed Central Park in New York right after they built it in 1852. And these folks built something that we know today looks like this. And when they built that and had that idea, I don't think they understood baseball. I don't think they understood playgrounds, dog parks, memorials, but what they knew they were doing was shaping a city. And if I may be so bold, the work of building these things called cities didn't stop in the 1840s. In fact, I think because of our diversity and the way we look at the world a little bit better than they did. And so I kind of do flip the onus back to y'all and say, this is your chance to sit in those shoes and shape a pretty profound future. And they're pretty rare opportunities to do that. And I kind of think we're in a better position than they were to do it more honestly, in a way that honors our community and our diversity and honors our future as well. So that was what you took on when you asked us to do this. And the big challenge amongst it all is this question, and the big questions matter. What if we do get this right? Let's think aspirationally. What if we do build the most livable, healthiest city in North America? Someone's got to be that city. Why not Chattanooga? And I think we've got a real chance to do that. So first, a little history as we get going. Remember, you're not the first ones to sit in these shoes and ask these questions. The history of parks in the city we call home is rather remarkable. It began in the 1890s with the establishment of our community's first parks that were dedication sites and monuments to the Civil War battles that were fought here. Then we had the creation of the Nolan Plan, which was the first idea when this city was rapidly growing and industrializing about what green spaces would mean in this fast-growing community. Fast forward to the auto-centric era of our town, fast forward to industrialization, and then a moment y'all know better than me, the famous Walter Cronkite Dirtiest City in America discussion, where this city said, no, that doesn't have to be our legacy. We don't need to be that. We can be something better. That's the first generation. We've got a second story, y'all. We're a city of Jim Crow. While those stories were going on, there were individuals of our community who were not allowed to enjoy their public parks, and the park system was not built for them. How we correct that and lean into that and honor that is right in front of us today. So bringing these two narratives together, where equity isn't just a word, but this idea that parks belong to all of us, is an important story that we want to pick up on, because everyone deserves a great park. Fast forward again, this committee, the city, took a gigantic step forward beginning in the late 80s, where it took a profound movement about establishing its riverfront as not something you throw garbage and junk into, but the idea of a place to celebrate. And it pushed forward the emergence of the city that you steward today. And the choices you have as a councilor are fundamentally different today than you would have had if those folks hadn't made those investments. And then if we're being honest, and I hope we are, and can be candid, we kind of stopped. There's an element of parks in the park story here in Chattanooga where, yay, we did it. We checked that box. Can we go on to the next? Well, the city didn't stop moving, y'all. The people are still moving here. Kids are still growing up here. Birds are still migrating through here each year, and the city is changing. So the question becomes, I think, to all of us, what's next? What is next for our community? What's next for what we need today? What do we do today to set us up when there's 300,000 people that call Chattanooga home for success? What's the legacy we leave behind? The POP attempts to address this and give you a pathway forward with some rationality and some predictability. We started here with some basic philosophies that came from council, the One Chattanooga plan, but also our professionalism and what we heard from citizens. These are really the guiding principles of the park system and what we think it should mean to live in Chattanooga. Equity, everyone has access, regardless of where you live, what zip code you live in, what your physical ability, what your emotional state. We should provide you with great access to great public places because the benefits benefit everyone. Next is quality. Just saying you have a park isn't enough. If it's got a jangly gem and a dangerous piece of metal showing, that ain't quality and that ain't a park. We have to deliver quality when we deliver these green spaces. Access, can you actually get to it from where you are and make it part of your life? It's nice to look at a park across the river, but if it's 10 miles of driving to get across the bridge, to get across the river to get to that park, I don't think that thing's doing much good for anybody. Place. We live in a special place. I heard Councilmember Coonrod say it earlier. We ain't got to copy Atlanta. We can be ourselves, and we've got some specialness here that we can build on, and we don't have to take a back seat to anyone. How do we elevate that neighborhood by neighborhood instead of trying to do these, forms that you just copy from one place and deploy somewhere else? And then we added nature. Cities aren't devoid of the stuff. There are a lot of critters that share this space with us. So you're going to hear us talk a lot about parks because of people. We got to remember those places are home for a lot of wildlife that don't have voices. So we have to be their voices as well and find places for them to live. And the reason we do that is we know science shows us more time in nature means healthier lifestyles for everyone. You live longer and you live healthier, and we live somewhere pretty remarkable. So those were our key principles. From that emerged something we want to hold on to, and I'm pitching out to y'all for your consideration, your thoughtfulness. This is the plan's vision. And the plan's vision is kind of a statement, y'all, about a city in a park, not a city with parks, rather a city in a park. That's a fundamental shift. That's saying a different value set is at work here. Number one, equity. Everyone has access to our breathtaking natural scenery and our rich and authentic cultural heritage. It's accessible and enjoyable to all. That touches arts, how we bring it to life. That touches the voices, how they experience it. Clean and beautiful waterways. They made me pull one line out. I wanted to say swimmable waters. What if all of our waters were swimmable? That's not a crazy thought, and it's not too much to ask to have waters that are public or swimmable. It's happening all over the place. I pulled swimmable out, but I have to provoke y'all every now and then. Iconic signature parks. The iconic view that I see all over everyone's headshots when we're on these Zoom calls are always of Coolidge Park looking south across the river. Those are iconic marks about what our city can be, and how we deliver those signature parks across our whole city strikes us as important. Authentic and welcoming neighborhood parks, y'all. This is going to be a big pivot we're asking y'all to consider. Rather than being worried about making the cover of Garden and Gun or Outside Magazine, what if we worried about our neighborhoods first and we built them block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, with beautiful neighborhood parks that everyone enjoys that feel as special as Coolidge? It's not too much to ask. These are fixable things. And then the Greenway and Blueway system that knits the whole city together. We've seen an explosion on the South Chick Trail. Y'all have seen it in St. Elmo with the extension of the Greenway. Anywhere we provide these pathways, people pick them up. And because we live in the great American South, we can use them most of the year. Why wouldn't we lean into that as well? So through this, we did a bunch of outreach y'all have heard from. We've met with each one of y'all individually as well. Thank you for the time you've given and in your communities. You can see the numbers there on the screen, and I applaud Akoshua and Blythe for going out of their way to give everyone an opportunity to talk. And look, y'all, this isn't about the people that are already in the parks. Not really worried about what they want. If you wear Lycra and have 2% body fat and make that look good, you're going to be heard. Okay, you're fine. We want to hear from everybody in our community, particularly those who aren't using the parks. What would it take to make them feel welcome? To make them make fitness, health, and wellness part of their life. So you see all the outreach we've done. I dare say this is the most depthly guided public engagement process in terms of shaping public parks that's been done in the city. And here's what we've heard, probably what you're looking for, new news. Well, when we surveyed them and we've met with them, 62% reply that they use their local parks at least several times per month. And the top three things they're doing in the parks there are probably not a surprise to y'all. Maybe they are. 61% like the paved walking trails, 41% like the walking and biking trails, and 27% like playgrounds. People like to do average things in average parks on average days, and that's a pretty special thing to us. When we asked your citizens and your residents to look ahead and said, what could you do today, 25 years from now, that you'd want to leave behind as a legacy? They said environmental health and natural resources that are accessible and enjoyable by everyone, high connected greenways, a healthier community, physically, emotionally, socially. And then 47%, nearly 50% said more neighborhood parks. We asked about barriers. You've got to ask what's good and what's bad simultaneously, y'all. Nothing jumped out as a surprise to us because signage is kind of a wreck, if you've noticed, around our park system. It is hard to figure out where our parks are. And if you've ever tried to take the river walk down by the Hunter Museum and figure out how the heck to get down to the ducks, good luck and Godspeed. And we're all from here and know that. So we've got some work to do there on signage and moving people around. Good news is this is fixable stuff. We then asked them what they would rate our park systems as. And the citizens in this community gave their public park system a solid B-. Now I'm gonna get a little preachy. A B- in my family when I grew up wasn't cutting it. Was asked to do a little bit more. But we just didn't stop there. We brought in analysts from across the nation who maintain park systems and design park systems from Vancouver to LA and all over the place, and had them do an evaluation, including visits to each one of our individual park sites. We then married that with our park staff and did what we did consider our first full park audit, where we got in it and kicked the tires and said, what have we really got here, y'all? And the grade from that team was the park system that's functioning at about a C level, saying that we can do more and we can do better. Because the question is, if it's not A quality, are people really going to want to use it? The next analysis that you asked us to compare is, where do these parks serve and who do they serve? We've got layers and layers of maps sitting on our shelves that you'll see later. I'm not going to try to do everything all at once, but I want to give you all a quick snapshot. We have about 6 acres per 1,000 residents right now in Chattanooga. The national average is 10 acres per 1,000 residents. So we're actually behind on park acres, which surprises a lot of people for a city like ours that takes pride in its public parks. We have about 900 acres today. To fill today's gap, we need about 644 additional acres. How those are deployed, I can get into the weeds on you that later. The good news is that's not quite as terrifying as it would seem in most cities, because our city actually sits on a lot of land for a variety of reasons. About 550 acres of those lands we think could be considered for conversion into a park site, which would make an immediate down payment. And if we all know what real estate's going for in this city right now, let's just say it's $100,000 an acre for developable land right now. Y'all can do the math as quickly as I can. We've got a heck of a down payment that we can make if we deploy it, activate them, and to choose to deploy them in that way. 35% of our residents live within a 10-minute walk of a trailhead or a public park. The national average is about 55%. Deploying some of that 550 acres is going to help us very quickly make life better for people in very real time. The solution then to our problem and our shortcomings becomes deployable in something you've never been presented with, and that, believe it or not, is a rational, systemic public park plan. Parks work just like sewers. Bill's here, so I'll make sure I use the wrong words, but I think sewers have collectors and force mains and big pipes that become small pipes. Parks work the exact same way, so that you're not always responding to what a citizen says, oh my gosh, I would like this here, here, here. There's a system you can deploy that would get in advance of that, and folks can find their needs served before they even realize they have them. That's the system we're going to recommend to y'all on this plan. It starts right here with neighborhood parks. These are images of some neighborhood parks, both here in Chattanooga and outside of it. The idea being we take our existing parks first and upgrade them. The point is we can ask our existing parks to do more and do it better and deploy very quick resources. And that becomes the foundation of our park system. So the metaphor I've used before with some of y'all is maybe Chattanooga's next move in public parks isn't the home run. Maybe it's just a lot of singles. We just lay down single after single after single of these great neighborhood parks that people can walk to, and we open in rapid order and deploy them in systems. Now, that has politics. Who gets first, who gets in line, all that. Totally understand that. It's our job to bring you all a plan that's rational, defensible, democratic, honors equity, and our other commitments. But there's a way to sequentially march through these things and get them done in a way that makes a difference. You don't do that, though, at the cost of our iconic signature parks. You do an and. Because these parks are what really drive a lot of community pride, but they also drive a heck of a lot of economic activity and keep us a thriving economy that has resources to do other things we want to do. So taking these parks and helping humanize them, making sure we're advancing them as well, because they're not just little dinosaurs that were built once and they're done. They have to evolve as well. And we have to ask these signature parks that we know so well to do even more. So it's an and there to keep them fresh and new. Think about a theme park. Theme park's always opening up a new ride, isn't it? Disney just didn't stop with Epcot. They open up a new ride every now and then because they want to keep you coming back. parks and public landscapes and cities, for this matter, have to do the exact same thing. And we've got a pathway to get you there. The next is urban ecology, a new space for Chattanooga. These critters that you see here on the left all rely on our city. 180 birds move through here every year. Our people also deserve stewardship and care. We sit here and we're standing here on First Nations land that's been here for 12,000 years. How we honor and steward that land connection is fundamentally important, fundamentally part of the Chattanooga experience. How we tell the story of our African-American brothers and sisters who died, who suffered, how we honor those stories in this landscape matters. How we honor the new stories or our new immigrants that are coming to the community to make them feel welcome in terms of cultural sensitivity also matters. The good news is this is what parks do. They do it better than any other place. So we want to provide you with a plan forward on cultural and ecological stewardship, with the big idea being the more of this exposure, the more access you have, the healthier and the better your life is. And we can back that up. So we're going to bring you a rational plan. I won't waste your time reading you through all this, but this is how you're going to be able to think through your park system now. You're going to be able to think through it as a system, from special use facilities that do individual things we want them to do, to services that we ask neighborhood parks and things like that to do that serve everyone. And we want to give you a roadmap forward that allows you to have a spreadsheet that says, this is what we're knocking out this year, this is what we're knocking out the following years. And you're able to go to your constituents and say, these are the improvements that we're going to make. And I want to pause for a second. I know a number of y'all had a chance to come see, Councilmember Noel was there, to have Mitchell Silver in town. And it was such a delight for those of us that were able to spend time with Mitchell. That's him hugging the tree on the left, was the New York City Park Commissioner. And Mitchell was brought to town to help us think through our green spaces. And the interesting thing is New York's different. It's big, it's scalable, I get it. But the fundamental story was right. He says, you don't ask people to come to you with what they want in their green spaces. You go to them. And you go to them with money. And you say, we have X million dollars to make this improvement in your neighborhood. What do you want? And doing that in New York allowed them to add $300 million in new parks every year for 8 years. The numbers are big, but we thought the principles are important, that you lean into that specialness of place, and that it's okay to smile and have some joy, because this is the fun work. Y'all have a lot of hard work. We kind of do want to be the Department of Fun and Care. And we're not going to be the department that's scared to hug, and we're not going to be afraid to hug you when we come out at these park openings either. I've hugged Councilmember Hester at a park opening and want to do a whole lot more of that going forward. And Mr. Mitchell Silver reminded us of that story. And that means that we have to have staff that can take care of it. I don't know if y'all have ever had a project come to you from our department where we said, this is the maintenance statement it's going to take to maintain this at a high quality each year going forward. So when South Chick opened, there probably should have been 3 or 4 staff members that were hired to take care of it. You don't raise a kid and then expect the kid to just take care of themselves. You apply resources and plan for it. Our parks have to be the same way. So anything we bring to y'all, we've got to tell you what it's going to take to maintain it at a high level, and not just have thoughts and prayers that it's going to be a pretty park going forward. So look for us to bring you a very disciplined approach so you can make a decision on, can we sustain maintenance and care of this before we take on something new as well. We shouldn't hide from this sort of stuff. So we're going to bring that to you as well. So what we call the top of the pop, because we like things that rhyme and we're state school grads, are really these key principles. And these are big ones that are very unique to Chattanooga. If I took you to park systems being designed in Huntsville right now or Knoxville, they're fundamentally different. So we're kind of zigging while they zag. Number 1, initiate a neighborhood park initiative to upgrade our existing parks, asking them to do more, to get new parks to serve underserved neighborhoods. That map I showed you earlier, all those white spots are underserved parts of our community that don't have park access and are hurting us in terms of walkability and health. And then set aside land in anticipation of development to come. Whether we build it out or not, it's really secondary, but the council members that are going to be sitting here in 2050, if we want to give them options going forward, they better have some land that they can play with, or they're going to be boxed out. Number 2, continue to invest in what we call our signature parks, those iconic landscapes that shape our community, that make the front newspaper, that allow our whole community to come together. Keep them fresh and new. It has to be an and. Mitchell Silver said it to us when he was here. He's like, you do your neighborhood parks, but you also do your central parks as well. You have to do both. They both serve different functions. Number 3, safe greenways and trailheads. We want to make measurable progress. We're at 35% now. We're going to bring you a plan that moves us to 55% of our community meeting that walking threshold to bring us into the national average. Number 4, design an urban ecology system where wildlife, trees, plants, healthiness is part of everybody's life, regardless of what zip code you live in Chattanooga, that we just don't pave over this place and call it paradise. We do something a little bit different here. Number 5, rapid investments, speed, 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 urgency, 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 to to create new partnerships and new improvements where we can in our most hurting neighborhoods. Let's deliver results today that help people. And let's make those park sites better quickly to serve those who most need them, who may not have the time or money to drive to the Smokies for a vacation in the summer, but depend on that neighborhood park to be their Smokies. Develop that pathway forward. And then number 6, come to you and work collaboratively with everyone to have the adequate resources to sustain it. Just don't build stuff and say, there's the ribbon cut, we're done. Understand that the worst a park should look is the day it opens. If we do our job right, it looks better every day after it opens going forward. The pathway forward is we're still on target, y'all, to hit the February 2023 delivery to you for your adoption and for incorporation within our larger land use plans. But the key here, if I leave you with anything else, is this is a key pivot where we say neighborhood parks matter, and we're going to build this community neighborhood by neighborhood, honoring the authenticity and the values of each one of those neighborhoods going forward with that crazy idea we have in Chattanooga that we actually are trying to do this one Chattanooga thing for real, and that we think everyone deserves that sort of great access. That's the end of me yapping. Y'all been very, very patient. I'm happy to take any questions, very happy to take offline dialogue. Appreciate all your support and encouragement through this process. Y'all have been dynamite for connecting us for folks as well.
Chairman.
Scott, I want to thank you and your team because the energy you have brought into and assembling this team is contagious. And I know since you've come on board and since and everyone on your working alongside of you, you've expressed a great interest in the East Brainerd and District 4 area. I have one park.
Yeah.
I'm the most dense,
Yep.
smallest footprint of all 9 districts. After 2025, we will shrink again, and we will still have the most population. I've got one park.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say thank you for in that regard is you're looking out and reaching out to me, and I've helped make some connections for you in possible acquisitions
Mhm.
for future when we're talking about expanding. And there's a great opportunity in East Brainerd.
Yep.
Hopefully that will come to fruition. And on another note, working alongside the people of District 4 to have the first outdoor pickleball courts.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to keep hammering on that because if you're not into this sport, I'm telling you, pay attention.
Yep.
It's sweeping the world right now, and we are way behind.
Yeah.
So, and so that's at Batter's Place, and I'm so excited about it. People online are excited about that and the attention that you and your team have brought to District 4. So thank you for that and that conversation. I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about increasing our partnerships
Mhm.
with agencies and foundations in the overall POP plan, and if you could touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot to say there. One is we have to adopt a spirit of what we're calling radical collaboration. Everyone's an ally in this, and we can't do it all. So be it a Boys and Girls Club, be it the National Park Service, be it a foundation, bring us your time, your treasure, and talents, and we're going to figure out a way to make partnering with us easier while also protecting the public interest. There's a transparency requirement we have as well to make sure we get out of it. But we want to open our arms into that space and ask, what are we doing and how are we doing it? To wit, you start first going, what's your job? Is our job to provide recreation programming for everyone? It probably isn't. There are probably partners that are better suited to do that. So let's have the ability to step back and say, y'all can fill that role and we can fill a different role. The POP's going to take a holistic view at that and recognize that we all have a place and a role to play in there. I think there's a big open-ended question, Mr. Chairman, and the POP will open the dialogue to it. But what is the appropriate engagement between our colleagues at the county in terms of the park systems they operate within us? Councilmember Dotley actually has a county park in her district, which is kind of crazy. So we need to look at how we deploy those assets most efficiently instead of duplicating as well. But that'll be our lens. The park acreage number, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to make a note of that. You know, we're down that 6 acres per 1,000 and 10 is normal. Well, even with that number, we're counting land in the owned by the National Park Service and TVA here within our calculation. So we're already benefiting from a lot of those credits, which means we've got some more of a lift to do than you may have in another community. But it's going to be all about partnerships and collaboration.
My third comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, is can you explain a little bit about the relationship we have with the county in regards to Enterprise South? I feel like there is, as you know, I spend a lot of time
Yeah.
in our parks,
Yeah.
on the Riverwalk, at Enterprise. I'm happiest when I'm outdoors
Yeah.
with my family, number one. But when I'm outside, being able to enjoy the beauty of this great city and county. But can you explain a little bit more that relationship we have with them, and maybe even some opportunities that we may be amiss?
I think there's a great opportunity there. Let's just level set that. That Enterprise South is, by whatever measure you want to use here, the second or third largest urban park in the state of Tennessee.
Hmm.
It's kind of surprising when we think of it that way. It is joint owned by the county and the city. You are correct. It is entirely programmed by the county for recreation. The city has no engagement with Enterprise South right now in terms of recreational programming. As we project forward about what a Chattanooga of 300,000 people looks like, I think we all have to look in that mirror and go, wow, growth feels like it's moving that way. What that site is asked to respond to, I think, is a discussion we need to have very thoughtfully about, is it a preserve, which it is now majorly, but do we ask it and ask our colleagues at the county, does it have active sports, active recreation? Does it have library? Are there other functions we can lean into? Because that's a green space bank for us. So we think it should go into the system. The POP speaks to it within the service level, thinking it has to be a part of the solution, and we're gifted to have it. But the exact form and fashion, I think, is a broader discussion.
I appreciate those comments, and Mr. Chair, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Scott, I just want to thank you for acknowledging the history within our parks. And we all know that, you know, green spaces in our parks, it improves the public health of our community. You know, I'm a big advocate of parks. And I totally agree that we should have access to parks all across the city of Chattanooga. And I'm just gonna be candid with you, to have, you know, a white man present inequities, the racism that's been, means a lot to me. You haven't been afraid to speak to what it is. You didn't come up here and try to put a Band-Aid on it and try to give us this glamour shot like, oh, just downtown. No, you hit some pain points that a lot of people refuse to address and continue to overlook and, you know, not really want to talk about it. So I appreciate that. I really do. Because we do know the inequities are, and if we're not willing to address it, and we saying that with the One Chattanooga strategy, like that's part of it, is being honest about what's been happening in our city and the disinvestment, the lack of it that's been happening, and the discrimination of it in our communities, and also how Black people have been disproportionately displaced even in certain areas. So I appreciate you highlighting. Again, I can't thank you enough. But I am looking forward to the movement, to see what happens in all of our districts, to make sure that everybody have access to great parks where families can come, and not just because I live in a Black community, it's solely catered to Black people. Like, parks should be accessible and diverse of all groups of people. We should feel comfortable with going at any part of this county and feel comfortable and safe with being there. So thank you again. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Coonrod. Councilwoman Carol Burks.
I loved your report. I am in a neighborhood that has very limited access to parks. So we have two neighborhood, well, maybe 2 or 3 neighborhood parks that we had an interesting conversation. Some people in one of the neighborhoods called, I guess it was your department, about a park in our area, about wanting to do more plantings and stuff, and got the person that answered the phone didn't know where the park was. This was just 2 weeks ago. And when they finally found it, said, oh yeah, that's one of our orphan parks. And I thought, you don't have a swing set in it. No, the reason is they don't have a swing set. So it may be that your idea about diversity in parks your staff might want to understand that too. So I chair the Budget and Finance Committee. And as I was looking at all of this, I saw a lot of dollars, and I applaud that. I would like very much, because sometimes our views haven't been to finance things that are the aesthetics that make us healthy. So I would like very much, when you make your presentation, to also talk about dollars. You have to remember that council only gets the vetted version from administration and doesn't get to think further beyond. I'm putting you in a terrible spot, I know. But many of us are dedicated to parks across the city and would like to know what that real tab is to do a quality job, and then how we can be part, because the final say-so for the budget is us. How we can be part of making the decision. We can't do that if we're not given options, if we're just given one version of the budget that's been vetted. So I don't think, well, you may get in a lot of trouble. I don't know, but I don't think so. I'd very much like it to be our choice in how, and you can't do that without having a full deck of information. So if you please would do that, Scott, I would really appreciate it. And I think my colleagues would as well.
Yeah, the administration has directed me to bring that full number to you.
Good.
And it's not scary. You know, we're like, get it all out there. Councilmember Henderson and I have had discussions. I'm gonna get in trouble now. The early deferred maintenance number I have, not for ink yet, is $179 million in deferred maintenance.
Okay.
Now, we didn't get into this hole in one election cycle to 5 years of some rather chronic disinvestment, y'all. We're not gonna get out of it in a chunk. So our team is already working on the spreadsheets to bring you a manageable elephant you can eat bite by bite. But by the same token, we think we owe the citizens measurable, tangible, visible progress, not words. And we
That's
want to bring you
very-
those options because that's policymakers do for us.
Well, we were in the same position with our streets and paving. And we started out $42 million in debt, which by now is much greater than that. And so we're not afraid of the numbers. We just need to know what they are. So thank you very much.
We'll bring it to you.
You good, Councilwoman? Let me say this, Scott. Let me say this publicly. Thank you for your energy, your passion, your level of professionalism, and your quest to elevate the Chattanooga Parks. Also, I want to thank you for your noble vision of a city and a park. Neighborhoods do matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we conclude Parks and Public Works. Let's go to Finance.
Call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. May I have a motion on the minutes, please? Thank you. I gather there's no one opposed. Thank you very much. Brent, couple of words before you go into this fee structure stuff. And they're all thanks. Thanks for us receiving all the finance status reports as you leave, and also the investment reports. Thank you for sending them to all my colleagues. At this point, I've received no questions, but to keep us up to snuff on what's going on, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. It lets us know how we stand so that we can make knowledgeable decisions. A personal thank you. You've been great to work with. Your common sense, your straightforwardness has been a pleasure for me as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for us to spend innumerable meetings together, talking, thinking, planning, strategizing, all of that in respectful way has been terrific. I've really enjoyed it. I will miss you very, very much. But no, I can always call the university yelling and screaming, right? If I think, God, guess what they're doing now? Brett, what do I do? Anyway, I value your friendship too. So thank you.
Thank you.
So the fees, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm sure you're going to give the rationale for all of that, and then talk about the fees themselves. So it's yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the kind words. This will be way more boring than what Scott presented, so bear with me. From time to time, we present fee changes to the city. Historically, most of those have been regarding rental fees for parks and city facilities and usage fees at pools and those sorts of things. And also, from time to time, there are fee changes presented from the LDO office for land development type fees. So what I have prepared, so all of you have three draft ordinances in your inboxes, as well as a copy of these slides. But three ordinances are scheduled to come onto the agenda on December 13th. The first one is for Chapter 26, which is the fees for events, rentals, and usage of Chattanooga parks, community centers, and recreational facilities. Chapter 10 is related to fee schedules. Primarily, the LDO deals with permits, moving buildings, demolition, and then other development-related fees. And then we have just some minor changes for chapters 14, 19, 22.5, and 27, which are all related to permits for electrical, gas, mechanical, and plumbing. So chapter 26 is where I'm going to start. We did get input from the two primary departments that have these fees, which is community development and parks and outdoors. We met with both departments and had a lot of back and forth on what changes were needed and why they were needed. One of the primary things we wanted to accomplish with this change is to really simplify the fee structure and make sure that they're understandable for the general public. They're easy to administer. And it gets rid of, we had a lot of different tiers for different types of usage, and we tried to get rid of as many of those as possible just to make it more simplistic and easier to administer. We also have eliminated several fees, which we don't think are really necessary. On the other hand, we're increasing fees for private use of facilities. So to Scott's point earlier, we have great parks and we want the public to be able to enjoy those. But we also realize that people want to rent these for private occasions and take those out of the stock for the general public at any given time. So we want to make sure that rental fees reflect the usage of public spaces and eliminating others from being able to use those for a given period of time. And then finally, some of these will reflect some inflationary adjustments that basically they just haven't been adjusted in quite a while. So I'm going to go through each section of chapter 26 before moving into chapter 10. For municipal parks, again, reorganizing and simplifying the fee structure is one of our primary goals. To do that, we've grouped parks in three categories within the chapter. Signature parks, which is the ones you would think of, Ross's Landing, Coolidge Park, Renaissance Park. We added Miller Park as a signature park. It was previously in a different chapter, or a different section of chapter 26. It was way back in section 58. We're moving it to this section. I think that should say 26, 23, by the way, typo up there. Specialty parks, we'll go through what is included there, and the neighborhood parks. So make it really simple to set fee structures for those three different types of parks. For signature parks, the primary changes we're making are not fee related. We're keeping the rental fees the way they are, but we are changing how we define the categories. Right now, the categories are category 1 and 2 are defined by event type versus event size. We think it makes more sense to use criteria based on the event size that's based on the number of participants. That also aligns with Chairman Ledford can attest. We've talked about use of some of the CDRC owned parks in particular, and defining things by how many people are going to attend the event, because it's a really good barometer for how large the event is and what kind of fee it should have. So the next thing is we removed fees for city services from this chapter, and that was like per hour charge for public works employees, per hour charge for a police officer, those types of things. The reason we want to remove those from this chapter is because there will be an ordinance presented to you all that will be a special events ordinance, which is needed, especially as we bring in a new software system for park rentals and those sorts of things. But I know Parks and Outdoors has some great ideas about how to make the special events process better as well. So we remove those here, and they will be in that ordinance. And then we did add one fee for event setup and tear down for large events, which just wasn't there wasn't anything in the ordinance for that, or in the code for that. Some of the few changes we've done with Signature Parks, Renaissance Park, we've added a new fee for small park grounds rental, and this is to accommodate small group rentals. There's really not anything at Renaissance Park outdoors that a small group could rent. There's some of the larger categories, but this would be a $100 rental for smaller groups. Also, the pavilion at Renaissance Park, we added a deposit because there was not one listed. And we also increased the daily rate by $50 per day, but we also greatly simplified the structure. Instead of a bunch of different tiers and this many hours and that many hours and those sorts of things. At Coolidge Park, the only changes we made were for Walker Pavilion and for the Carousel Party Room. We added deposits because they were not listed. We also increased the hourly rate by $15 per hour, which hasn't changed in quite a while, and then simplified the fee structure for those rentals as well. And all of this, you'll see all this in the draft ordinance that you have, which, by the way, is being formatted into the normal ordinance format to hit the agenda next week. For specialty parks, again, we wanted to make sure we simplify the fee structure and then categorize the fees based on size of event, just like we're doing for Signature Parks. For specialty parks, you're going to have lower fees than you do for Signature Parks. And those parks include the grounds of Blue Goose Hollow, and then the large, what I would call area parks like Eastlake Park, Greenway Farm Park, Heritage Park, the Martin Amphitheater under the bridge, and then Riverview Park. So we're considering those specialty parks versus neighborhood parks because they are larger and they can accommodate much larger groups, and there's a lot more maintenance and those sorts of things in those parks because they are larger. And then for neighborhood parks, and going back to specialty parks, there's not really any major fee changes. It's really just the organization of it and calling out some of these parks. Like, for example, Eastlake Park or Riverview Park, they weren't named, but it depended on how many people you had at the park and what time and when. So this simplifies it greatly. And otherwise, there's really not any major fee changes. Neighborhood parks would be anything that's not a park listed as a signature or specialty park. And for the neighborhood parks, we wanted to reduce the fees to make them much more accessible and available to neighborhoods. So, for example, if you have less than 150 participants, we lowered the fee from $150 to $25 daily rental, and no deposits required. So that is really to encourage access and use of these parks by smaller groups. And then for neighborhood parks, where someone wants to rent it and have more than 150 participants, we would require a deposit, but we decreased that rate from $500 to $150. So those are both significant decreases that we're proposing. Moving on to community centers, again, simplifying the fee structure was a primary goal, but we also want to make sure that when these facilities are being rented and they're taken out of the public realm and people like everyday Chattanoogans, like we talked about earlier, can't just go in and use these spaces. We want to make sure that the fee, is competitive, but also reflects the fact that there's private use of a public facility. So for multi-purpose room rentals, we propose increasing the rate from 20 per hour to 50 per hour during operating hours. And then for non-operating hours, from 25 to 65. From gymnasiums, the proposal is to increase from 40 per hour to 100 per hour. And then for fee-based classes, there was a range listed for different types of classes, from all the way from $1 to $800, depending on the class and and that's for like materials and those sorts of things, depending on what kind of class it is. If it's like a major pottery class or something, there may be a higher fee, but we changed that range from 0 to 500. The reason we want 0 to be in there so that we can offer free classes. When the minimum is $1, that means we have to charge someone at least $1, or it will show up in an audit report when Stan gets around to auditing those, that particular center. So we want to make sure to set the floor at 0. And then in the ordinance, there's language that talks about, these things have to be approved by the director in advance. You can't just willy-nilly have a class. There is documentation about what the class is, what the fees are, and that sort of thing. For swimming pools, again, simplifying the structure. For outdoor pool rental rates, there was 5 or 6 combinations of how you could rent the pool, an outdoor pool, and it's complicated and convoluted. We are proposing just to change it to a flat rate of $300 to rent out the entire pool. And that's competitive with what pool rentals are, whether it's the YMCA or something like that. And it takes the pool, away from the general public for that amount of time. So we believe that's a fair rate. For the spray park rental rates, again, changing that from a tiered structure to just flat fees, $100 during operating hours, and that's a maximum of 25 participants, and then $300 after or outside of operating hours, and that's a maximum of 50 participants. So, for example, if someone wants to rent the spray park for a birthday party for 45 kids, they know that there's just a flat rate they have to pay, and they can use it for that amount of time. Indoor pool rentals, we're proposing an increase from 45 an hour to 50 per hour. And then we want to eliminate the usage fees for outdoor and indoor pools other than Warner Park. So Carver, for example, it would be free to go swim there. South Chattanooga indoor pool, make it free to go swim there. Warner Park, we talked about reducing or removing that fee as well. But after lots of discussion, we felt like it should remain at $3 per person as a daily entry fee. That is primarily to control how many people are at the pool, because the lines there, you can really get stacked up with people during the summer if it's free and anybody can come anytime. So this helps with controlling the amount of activity and amount of people having to wait to get into the pool. And we're hoping that since Carver and other pools will be free, people would go to those if they, if Warner Park is just too crowded. Next section is day camps. So we had the recommendation from community development to restore summer camp fees. This is the same fee it was several years ago. It would restore to $300, which is 8 weeks of summer camp, includes lunch every day. I'm not aware of any other cheaper place for summer camp. A lot of places are $300 a week, much less $300 for 8 weeks. I think part of the rationale here is because when people have to put a little skin in the game, they tend to show up more often. When it's free, we find that some kids come to camp 2 or 3 times, or they come 1 or 2 days a week, and that sort of thing. So if there is a fee, one, it helps us plan because we know how many people are registering and that sort of thing, but also it tends to stabilize participation. There's an early registration fee discounted to $250 instead of $300, but then also we would bring back scholarships. This is, and some of you that were here, I don't know, 8 years ago may remember, this is the fee we had. This is the structure we had for several years before it changed a couple of times. So a scholarship would be available for children who qualify for free and reduced lunch through Hamilton County Schools. And that would reduce the fee to $40 for 8 weeks of camp. So it's still a little, we charge a little bit of money, but it's $40 for 8 weeks of camp, and that includes lunch. So I think that overall is a good structure, and that's what was recommended by community development. It would also establish fees for school break camps, fall break, spring break, winter break, and those would be $75 for the duration of the break, as well as art camps at $75. And then Parks and Outdoors intends to have some camps that would be free, and they would be outdoor activity camps, not the day camp that you have at the community centers, but separate camps throughout the city in different locations. Sports programming and fields. We have some increases here based on the use of these facilities. For Washington Hills, semi-pro games, it would increase for the football field at Washington Hills, it would increase from 200 to 500. For high school and middle school games, it would increase from 200 to 350. And youth league games would increase from 100 to 150. Those were the recommended rates from the recreation division. At Tyner and Montague Fields, we would add a tournament and special fee at $500. And then there's a fee for leagues and games that we want to remove because it's not, we don't consider it to be necessary. And then softball field rentals, again, that's a fee structure we wanted to simplify as much as possible. The fees do increase throughout, and it's a lot to put on the slide. So, but it's not crazy increases. It's reasonable increases throughout for all the softball facilities, and that will help bring money in to the city because we do have maintenance that needs to occur at those facilities. The rates are all competitive, which they have to be for us to get those tournaments that we want, and then for national scope tournaments, the fee for a national scope tournament, which is considered an economic development event, those all the fees are waived, and that's in the ordinance. The only thing we're changing there is the definition. The definition currently says if we register 40 teams within 100 miles outside the city of Chattanooga, and we want to change that to 80 miles just to reflect the teams we know that are going to travel here, and make sure that we stay in compliance. There were a couple tournaments, and this was in an audit report that's already been public, but there were some that were 90 miles instead of 100 miles, and there's several of those we know that will come here. So we feel like it's best just to change it to 80 miles, and that's still people traveling far enough that they're likely going to stay overnight for a softball tournament. For these next sections, it's pretty simple. Skate park, we are proposing to eliminate all fees. That's for entry as well as renting equipment and different things. For Champions Club, we want to eliminate the user fees. Fitness Center, we would also eliminate all the user fees. That's the fitness center at Warner Park. Therapeutic recreation, one small change to change the maximum of the fee range from $50 to $75. So the range is 0 to 50 currently. It would be 0 to 75 depending on the activity and approval from the director. And then for Outdoor Chattanooga, we wanted to simplify the fee structure and also clarify activities available. Like, for example, it had only mountain biking, and we wanted to clarify that there's biking, whether it's mountain or road biking. And then also establish group retreat rates by group size, which is easier to follow and understand, and it's just a easier to follow fee. For civic center rentals, Heritage House, the big changes are to decrease the rate for city residents from 60 per hour to 50 per hour, but increase the rate for non-city residents from 70 an hour to 75 per hour. Same thing on the daily rate for city residents. It'd be a decrease from 600 per day to 500 per day. If you're not a city resident, it goes from 700 to 750. And then we added wedding fees, which, that is a facility that's used for weddings. And there's an option to have some wedding services, put chairs on the lawn, those sorts of things. So we added that fee in. For North River Civic Center, we increased the meeting room rental rate from 35 to 50 per hour. And then increased special event rental from 60 per hour to just a flat fee of $300. I will note that there's no change to the fact that neighborhood associations can meet in both of these facilities for free on certain days of the month and certain times, which is listed in the ordinance. And then finally, for Chapter 26, we have municipal golf fees. So all the fees are fairly minor changes. Weekdays, 18 holes, 23 to 25. Weekends, 28 to 30. And then for seniors, it would go for 17 to 18. 9 holes weekdays, 1150 to 1250. Weekends, 14 to 15. Seniors would go to $11.50 to $12 flat. Cart rental would go for 14 to 15 and 7 to 750. And then all the annual passes would increase approximately 10%. Some of them are 8.99, but I don't think there are any over 10%. There's also a sentence in the ordinance that allows the golf manager to temporarily increase green fees by a maximum of 25% when market or course conditions require that. And I think that's not language we currently have in the code. And I think it would be really important for us to be able to do that because, for example, we have gas golf carts now. They're much nicer golf carts. It's a better lease arrangement than we had with electric, but we got them right before gas went to $5 a gallon. So it would have been ideal if the golf manager had the authority to do a temporary increase with a cap on how much he can increase it to account for that. So that you will see that language in the ordinance as well. So that's it for chapter 26. Let me go ahead and run through 10 and the rest before we do questions.
So let me ask you this. This is a good overview. You've sent all this to us. Do you want questions now, or do you want us, I think maybe a chance to get this overview and
Yeah.
digest it?
Perfect.
Would
Yeah,
that work?
That
for
would
you?
work. And I think that's why we set it out to the 13th. So that
Okay.
you had, and I wanted to present it a couple weeks ahead of time so you had time to look at it and think about it. And then you can submit questions to Vicky and Joda and Brooke
Okay. All right.
and Julia.
And the
Ryan.
one question, the one thing I noticed about, I love the way you say, and you can send it to anybody but me. I got it. What the golf, I don't know, both Brainerd Golf Course and Brown Acres have clubhouses on them that might want to be rented. I didn't
Mhm.
see them listed under golf courses.
It's a good question. I think it's a good question for Eddie.
For them. to
Greta
answer.
and
Yeah, I
Scott.
get it. Just note to
Jason.
self, Vicky or whomever, it was left off.
That's a
It
good
might-
point, though. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I don't know that a fee has ever been in place for
There
that.
hasn't been. Well, I'm not sure of that because I know that the Chamber of Commerce, Midtown, used to rent Brainerd Golf Course.
Oh,
I
you
don't-
know, it just occurred to me. I believe there's language in the code that allows the golf manager to do fees for special events,
Okay.
and
all
it's
right.
not set in stone. It's kind of a judgmental case by case basis.
Okay. All right. 10.
All right, chapter 10. All of this was done with input from the Land Development Office. We essentially are just adjusting fees for inflation. We haven't adjusted these in a while. So for building permits, the base fee there's 5 ranges that are listed in the code. So this is by range. The base fee would go from $25 to $40. That second range would have no change in the base. And then you can see small changes in the base fee for the other ranges. And those are like range 5 is property valued at more than $500,000, for example. So the permit fee would go from $19.50 to just a flat $19.25. And then with permits, there's an additional fee for additional value for every additional $1,000 of increment. And so you can see what they were. Ranges 2 through 5 were $550, $450, $350, and $250. We're just proposing to move all those up a quarter per $1,000. So not too much of an increase, but enough, that it makes up for the fact that costs have risen significantly for what we have to do to process permits and inspect various things and those sorts of things. For the fee for moving buildings or structures, we want to increase from $125 to $150. For demolition fees, for residential, increase from $125 to $200. For non-residential under 10,000 square feet, from $250 to $350. And then the last one you see there's $400 to $500. So not huge increases, but enough to make up for increased cost. The other fee section, this is the largest section in chapter 10. I've only listed the fees we're proposing to change. Otherwise, if I don't have it listed in the presentation, there's no change. But the way we do the ordinance is we replace the whole section. So we have to list the ordinance is much longer. This is just a list of things that are changing. For a certificate of occupancy for beverage license, from 50 to 125, certificate of completion from 15 to 25, a zoning letter fee double from 75 to 150, compliance letter fee 50 to 75, permit transfer fee from 25 to 50, modular home site investigation from 50 to 100. And then we have floodplain variance requests goes from 100 to 200, and fire district removal request fee from 100 to 200. Those are not these are not necessarily based on the cost it is for us to do this. We looked at some comparable cities for these fees in particular. Most of ours in this section were in line, and that's why there's very few changed. I mean, the list, when you see it, is triple the number of fees that are listed here. These are the ones where we were way out of whack, so we wanted to make some adjustments to make them more relevant to what we see in other places. And then finally, last two things in Chapter 10, we did add a fee that currently does not exist, which is a building permit plan revision fee. This is something that was recommended by LDO, and that fee would be set at 5% of the plan review fee, and that's what was recommended by LDO. And then in Section 1032, which is engineering plans review, we wanted to simplify the structure. There were 3 lot size ranges, like up to 10, 11 to 50, more than 50, and it was different ranges and tiers. We just wanted to change it to if it's 10 lots or less, it goes from 120. We're increasing the fee from 125 to 175, but then just have one other category. For every lot above 10, it's $10 extra, and that's it, instead of 3 or 4 different fee ranges. That's it for Chapter 10. And then for these other chapters, there's not a whole lot of change. For all of these, for electrical, mechanical, gas, and plumbing, the current permit fees are $35. We are proposing that we increase them all to $40. Not much of an increase at all. But that's that $5 increase is what was recommended by LDO when we look through all of these. For electrical, there's no other changes, just the permit fee. For mechanical, there's no other changes, just the permit fee. For gas, it's the permit fee, but we also want to increase the fees for boiler inspections, which are all based on BTU ranges. We found that we were fairly out of whack on these as well compared to other cities and what those fees look like. So and those are based on ranges. You can see we're just doubling every fee. So the first one goes from 5 to 10, and the last one's 35 to 70. So we're just doubling all of those. And those are for boiler inspections based on the size of the boiler per BTU range. And then for plumbing, the fee from 35 to 40. And then there's a list of additional permit fees for plumbing, and it's for example, each plumbing fixture, each building sewer, each water heater. And there's a whole bunch more that are not changing. These are just the ones that we think need to change. You can see some of these are very small, but it puts us more in line with where they should be. And I won't read all those, but you can see change some from $5 to $6, some from 10 to 20. And then there's the vacuum breaker, 5 to 10, underground sand, grease, or oil interceptor from 25 to 35. So fairly minor increases, but they do put us where we believe they should be. And that is all of the changes you will see in the ordinances that you have.
We
in your
will hold
inbox.
our questions till we have a chance to read the whole thing. And I would encourage you guys to contact who is Vicky? Who is the contact person?
Oh, you can always contact Joda.
Joda.
At chattanooga.gov.
I can't think of
Brent will
any.
just be down the street. You can still call him. He'll have the same phone number.
Vicky, yes.
I
Vicky,
think all of you should en masse contact Joda 3 or 4 times a day with your questions. I just have one basic question. I'm assuming that these are covering the cost of doing business.
Yes, that is the basis for increasing
Okay.
most of these, other than the use of public space. So the rental fees, I mean, they do cover the cost of we have to have staff available and all that, but we also want the fees to reflect the fact that we're removing them from public use for a given period of time.
Okay.
But for all the development related fees, yes, those are just to simply cover some of the increased costs that we have, whether it's cost of personnel, cost of materials, going out and doing inspections just costs more than it used to.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Good luck.
Thank you.
You'll do well. Excuse me. What? Oh, yes, sir. I saw Ken Smith. Huh? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we're finished with the report, before we adjourn to 6, I'd like to just recognize a couple of people in the room that will be missed. No, don't walk away, Mr. Goldberg. So this is your last agenda session.
It is.
Ms. Campbell, this is your last agenda session with us. And I wanted to say that it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to work with you both. You will be sorely missed. You make this place special, and it runs much better when you're here. We will get through somehow. But I wanted to say personally that thank you. You've been a fantastic and incredible asset to this city, and I appreciate your friendship. And my door is always open, as my phone is always on for you. And I thank you very much and wish you both the absolute best.
And with that, we're adjourned till 6
Can I
o'clock.
just say one thing?
Sure.
First of all, thank you very much. But also, I want to recognize the fact that we have a fantastic finance staff at the city of Chattanooga. For the past 11 months, I get to be the one who takes credit for many things, but without a staff of 50 plus folks that work very hard every day, people that have been here that know a whole lot more than I know, and share their wisdom and insights. That's who I think we should thank for our success in the city when it comes to finance and budgeting. And you're in good hands with Vicky. Well, unless she gets tired of you quickly, we'll see. But we have a great staff in the city, and everything will be just fine.
Thank you. We're adjourned till 6. Thank you.
Thank you.